You're listening to Inflow and On Fire, your weekly podcast companion for finding your flow and stoking your inner fire. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. Every month, our soulful discussions spark from a relevant fairy tale or myth. These help us better understand how to navigate our inner worlds and everyday lives so that we can live more joyfully, bring those big and beautiful dreams to life, and make the world a better place. Want to get the most out of this episode? Well, be sure to snag the free gorgeous study guide in the show notes that includes a written copy of the fairy tale or myth, soulful journaling questions, and other additional juicy resources. Welcome back to Inflow on Fire.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so pumped to have you here. This has been a big month for you and I with this story.
Yes.
To say the least.
Yes.
Yes. To the point where you asked me, you should tell everybody what you asked.
I was like, what is next month's fairy tale or myth? Because I need to mentally prepare myself for what's going to be happening.
It's so real. It's so real.
Yes.
Yeah. This one rocked our worlds. And so instead of this being where we just kind of go through and talk about the concepts of the story, this one feels so relevant and so important that instead we're going to take this a little bit deeper into each of our experiences with the story and talk about those themes and the things that did come up. Because honestly, I feel like Bluebeard is a myth that every woman for sure should know. Every girl should know. I've made sure my girls know this story. I read it to them even when they were younger, and it's not one you easily forget. So even like they remember it years later, it's just such a cool story for us to tell.
The place I'm actually feeling to start is, again, go read the story or hear it, because I really do think it makes it's more potent. Go listen to it first, because I've had listeners say they listen to it after, which is cool too. But I think go listen to it.
Pause now.
Go listen to it, because it's short. I mean, it's not long.
And when you're reading these, there is like having an experience with the story that naturally happens that can open things up for you that hearing a discussion just never could equate to that.
Right. Yeah. So the thing that's coming up for me now is how Bluebeard courted a bunch of the sisters.
Yeah.
Right? They were all hanging out with him, and multiple of the sisters were like, nope, something's wrong here. Something's not right. But the one sister that was like, no, like he is. For those of us who have been in experiences with an unhealthy masculine and that way, I don't believe it's because there was something wrong with our intuition or that we were broken in any way or we didn't listen to ourselves. I believe that those experiences are intentional. And so the fact that her intuition did not warn her that he was quote unquote bad or wrong does not mean there's anything wrong with her.
Well, and actually in the story, she did feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but then she justified to herself. Oh. So she did get a little warning too, but that doesn't always happen.
Right,
to your point.
Right.
Yeah.
And same, right? Well, okay, to that point, right? We have not been taught to trust. Like, there's so much programming around believing what we see over what we feel.
Yes, good call. Yeah.
And so she would have had that little sense of like, oh, maybe something's wrong. Exactly what happens. What happens. And then, but their behaviors, like they keep behaving and doing these things where your brain is like, why are you being mean? Like, why would you think that? Like, he's clearly a good guy. Look, he's doing this and he's doing this and he's doing this. And so we're like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be, I don't want to judge him or be mean. He's for sure a nice guy. Look at all of these things.
Well, and he literally was just doing nice things. So those are moments we're all familiar with as well, where it's like, this looks fine, but I feel off about it and I can't name why. So it must be me.
Right.
My problem.
Right. So, I mean, I think to kind of head into really kind of both of our stories is that sometimes Bluebeard manifests in a female form.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. So I think that maybe, well, I mean, the word that I use to describe Bluebeard is a snake. And I mean, I really don't believe any of us intentionally want to harm anyone. I do think that it comes from our trauma. I mean, is it fine to bring up that we saw that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
cut. But yeah, I just gotta say that so I can search and find it.
Okay. Okay. So at the beginning of this month, or last month, just felt. Okay, sorry.
Time was blurring. Who knows when it was?
So, I saw the show It Ends With Us.
Same. Yeah.
Yes. And
actually, I saw it from your recommendation.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I saw it from my mom's, right? Lorna was like, you should go to this movie. I had no clue. I really did fall into the, what a fun rom-com about. What?
If you haven't seen it, it addresses themes of domestic abuse. So
yeah. Whew. The thing that stood out to me the most about this movie was the childhood trauma that the main character, the main male character had encountered.
Yeah.
And for me, that was definitely a theme in relationships that I've stayed in that have not been good for me out of this compassion for their past trauma. Mm-hmm. And how could I expect myself to be any different? This happened to them when they were children. Like, what kind of a person would abandon them when they have had this horrible thing? They were little. They didn't choose to have this happen. And so I think that is like, it's an extremely important thing that I have learned, is that trauma can manifest itself in a person being like Bluebeard. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't excuse the behavior because of the trauma. Mm-hmm. And so,
I mean, I literally rushed my daughter to it after her boyfriend was exhibiting behavior that was highly abusive verbally and emotionally, and looked like it was going to turn physical. And we were having serious conversations about it. And that was a huge reason why, because I could tell, like, even immediately after, he just loses his cool, freaks out, scares her to death, to the point where she was afraid she needed the cops involved, potentially. Right? Like, that scenario happens. And within, minutes after, he's crying, begging her to forgive him, apologizing, saying that wasn't like him, it'll never happen again, which is obviously the same story. We've heard this story so many times in these scenarios, right? That she was even tempting in her mind, like, oh, like, maybe I caused this. Maybe I aggravated him to this point. If I can just behave and be nicer and treat him better, then he'll never act this way again.
Right. Like, she has the power. Mm-hmm. Yes. So my goal is to be super sensitive to not turning really anybody into a monster per se, because I think our minds fight against that. Yeah. They fight against that with, again, that happened when they were a child. But to just understand that there is trauma that creates a specific response in a person, and kind of going back to the Selkie myth, like, there isn't anything that you can actually do to make that trauma better as far as being an external source. Like, for that behavior to stop in their life and for them to heal from that, they need to do some internal healing. And we can try as hard as we can to behave and not go in the one room. But essentially it doesn't work. Because that's not the thing that solves their trauma, is us behaving perfectly. Yes. We can't fix it. Yeah. It's like, this is hitting on some big themes. So this was maybe perfect to kind of weave in a part of my own journey with this story. I think was kind of tipped off with what was happening with my daughter, and seeing, like, I mean, we had loved this guy she was dating, and sure, I had seen them fight in front of all of us quite a lot, and I had seen warning signs, but I also knew he was going through a hard time right now, and he's, been dealt some tough hand, and
was feeling like I could see all his good sides. And like you're saying, I love the point you're bringing up of like that part of us that will battle with this person is a monster or this person is just bad because it's, I think our body fights. I feel like you would say this, but like it fights because it's just not true. Like nobody is just pure bad or pure monster.
Yes. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And the way that processing mind works is like they're either or not. They are or they are not. And so as we're like, no, this person's a monster, there's way too much evidence to support that they're not. And so you're not going to necessarily logically be able to, if your reason for leaving them is because they're a monster, you're never going to let yourself leave because there isn't enough to support that they're a monster. And so with the story kind of helping bring you into that story, I had an experience with some plant medicine a couple of years ago, and it took me to, so I believe when we're little, we're just living from our feeling body and we're connected. And then we're being taught how the world works. Like, oh, this is what a safe person behaves like. This is what a not safe person behaves like. This is what they look like. This is who they are. This is who they're not. And so
stranger danger.
Yes, exactly. And so that's what I felt like the medicine took me back to was when I was creating this list of what a safe person is and what a safe person isn't. And I almost watched myself realize that my experience with my dad caused him to be not safe. And as a child, I'm like, okay, so if he's not safe, I need to get away from him. And it's like, well, I can't get away from him. And like, we're little and we're like, okay, well, I can't get away from him and I can't be around safe people. So I guess I just make everyone safe. Exactly. Like you were, yes, like you were saying like that, like you just got to make everyone safe. So this is also why, like just labeling someone as a monster and, they don't deserve to be loved. And none of that is true. None of that's true. So how can we remain eyes wide open to relationships that manifest as Bluebeard and how to keep ourselves safe being in a relationship with someone who clearly does not see themselves that way?
Well, I'll tell you, like as a kid, I totally had those moments as well. This was with my own parents of like, they had, especially my mom, like such anger issues where it was terrifying and intense and scary, and also couldn't leave that scenario, just like you're saying. And so, like I'm supposed to stay away from them, but I can't. So great. Everybody's safe. And I could see they're good. I think as a kid, I feel like you probably were there too, where it was just very natural to see the good in people, no matter their behavior, no matter how bad they could behave. Right. And so then seeing, well, everybody actually is really good was the belief that I took on instead, and just really decided to like lean into that, because I could even see in the contrast where my mom tended to lean more towards pessimism and seeing the worst in people and situations. I went the opposite extreme in seeing the best in people, no matter what was happening.
And trusting them.
Absolutely. And so then what it actually turned into is if everybody is safe, then nobody is safe. And so I'm finding that was my month with this story, was recognizing, whoa, wait a minute. It's actually not kind to myself to continue to believe just that everybody is equally as safe for me to be myself with and to share myself with, or to not, because I could see two contrasting relationships. One with a person who literally had betrayed my trust in a major painful way that led to a year plus of intense spiraling, deepest, darkest, all the fears, all the feelings, right? So trying to bring and keep that person in my life, even though my gut feeling is, I just don't feel great around them. Like, I don't know why. It's like their words they're saying are nice and they're kind and they are doing nice things and they say that they care about me, but I still have a weird feeling, and continually shutting that feeling down, believing like, I'm just going to believe people at their word. I'm going to believe what they say to me. So if they say they're good and that they care about me, I'm going to believe them. Meanwhile, I'm trying to deepen my relationship with my own husband and recognizing all the ways that I am still holding myself back from him, still trying to hide from him, still trying to not share everything. I mean, we're looking at a 20 plus year marriage. We have a quote unquote very healthy marriage, but looking at deeper levels of intimacy and just finding terror, not just fear, at every turn. And how potent and powerful it was this month to come to the realization, like, he actually is a safe person for me, 1,000%. Like, one of the safest people on the planet for me to just be completely me in all my raw vulnerability, magic, and mess, right? Whereas this other person is not. And so it's been a big month of reclaiming, like, I don't have to live with the Bluebeard. I don't have to stay in that castle with that person. I don't have to stay in close relationships where I have to play the dance of like, well, just don't open that door and then you can have this great relationship with them. Instead, like, I can distance myself from people on the outside who are not safe, and I can grow closer. Like, as I saw this month with making that distinction, it absolutely opened me up to share myself more and feel more and more safe in a relationship that actually was safe because of making that distinction. It's profound.
So cool. So cool. While you were talking, it was causing me to think about how I didn't read a lot of the
commentary.
Yes, but I have heard you talk about, mention multiple times, the Bluebeard that's inside of us.
Yes.
And so how the Bluebeard inside of us can bring out the Bluebeard in them, or whatever this
goes along with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I have a client in particular right now who, well, actually, I've been thinking about like what would define a safe person? How would you define a safe person? And like who I would define as not safe is someone who didn't have the ability to see all parts of them.
Wow.
So, yeah. I mean, in the culture that we have grown up in, is it acceptable to be Bluebeard?
Wow. No, and is literally like cut off and killed parts of themselves and is hiding it in other places and doesn't know or isn't aware. Yeah.
Yeah. And so think of how the psyche would even try to protect you, because if you are not, if you're essentially going to go to hell, if you're bad, then, I mean, depending on the level at which your psyche is going to mess with that, it's not going to allow you to ever see where you ever were wrong, which is essentially the wounding of the narcissist.
Chills, yes.
Right? Yeah, like they legitimately cannot see that they are wrong because it is actually too dangerous.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so the one particular person that we were talking about in your story and in with this client is that it's really difficult to have an honest relationship with someone who cannot see where they went wrong. And so so Bluebeard to them is hidden. And, but again, like our world is really manifesting from these unconscious stories. So someone who can actually be quote unquote very unsafe for you, they don't even know it. It's not even consciously intentional.
I love that distinction. That's so important to recognize.
Right. And because, I mean, and on all of the things, like I am, he's 14 now, but he was still kind of involved in the LDS culture. And when he went into his first interview when he was 12, I'd never even thought this. The words just came out of my mouth, but I said, buddy, I need you to understand that that this organization is one that teaches you that it's not okay to lie, but essentially forces you to lie to be able to participate because you can't be perfect. Right. And so these parts of us that are not good, we try to suppress them or pretend that they're not there, even though we know they're there, and maybe try to then just up the giving or up the being a better person to try to compensate for this thing that we're going to, maybe if I'm good enough, he'll just go away.
God, it's so true. That's exactly what was happening in my daughter's relationship, like very clearly, that the good times were so good, over the top good, but the bad times were terrifying and dangerous, And that was very confusing in her brain, still is, for her to work through of like, well, he never actually did anything to justify, like, he could have done something a lot worse for me to justify leaving him, you know? Instead of it being enough that it just wasn't a safe place for you. That, yeah, he was not aware of all the parts of himself. He was cut off from that and did not thus have the ability to manage his emotions. So the thing that I want to go back to was with what you were bringing out in the story of how our inner Bluebeard colludes with the outer Bluebeard. That was an incredibly important distinction for me to be able to work through this, because when I believed that people just outside of me are safe or not, and it's my job to like try to avoid all the unsafe people and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It was terrifying. I was really intimidated by that. But as soon as I understood there is a part of me that will go along with them, then I started able to better discern how to recognize these types of circumstances and how to work with them better. So for example, with the inner part of this that's colluding, it's like, say I'm in this unsafe relationship or this relationship professionally that hadn't felt great, and all the right words are being said. Well, the inner Bluebeard in me is working overtime to convince me of how amazing this person is and how lucky I am to have them in my life, and how I'm just being super judgy and judgmental and paranoid, blah, 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 all the things, right? And so recognizing, first of all, like, I can be super judgy and paranoid and judgmental. Like, that's a real part of probably all of us at some way, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but what this voice inside of me does is it wants me to discount my own intuition, my own inner knowing. And so instead of this voice backing me up, like in an instance, for example, with my husband, where I am being paranoid, like, why was that lady looking at you at the gym and what was going on and blah, blah, blah. Like, that would be paranoia, where if my brain brought that up and was like, hey, I think you're being a little paranoid, I'd be like, yeah, I actually am. Thank you for helping me see that. And now I can see him as he really is, which is that there's nothing to worry about. Whereas in this scenario, it's like, and that would bring me back to a place of peace, that recognition, right? That inner knowing that, okay, yeah, I can see myself clearly. But then with this person or anybody who isn't safe, then I'm recognizing this inner Bluebeard colludes in a way that makes me distrust my intuition and doesn't take me to a place of knowing and doesn't take me to a place of peace, but instead keeps me in this drama or chaos spiral with them, where I feel like just all my energy when I'm around them is in managing all of this anxiety and fear and the feelings that are coming up and trying to make it okay all the time, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I was thinking, like, how would we define Bluebeard's 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 personality. So it's like, so thinking of the collusion that would happen. So, like in the person that we were, anyway, getting into with your story, it was like, what came up was clearly just a deep insecurity of not being enough and feeling threatened by your gifts and your amazingness. So Bluebeard, like, in what was coming to me is he almost represents the aspect of us that isn't wanted and isn't enough. And so it would kind of make sense how he would collude and try to be like, because he wants to believe he's enough, right? We want to believe we are enough and that we have value and that we are good enough. And so as he's recognizing himself in the other person, he's wanting you to be convinced that they are a good person. Does that make sense? Where he's like, no, don't look. No, they really are a good person because you have me too. And we're good. Like just trying to, right? Like you have me in you too. And we're a good person. And so it's like this weird, twisted, just not clear of like why we would want to be defending their Bluebeard, our own Bluebeard wanting to defend their Bluebeard.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, that's
right?
totally it.
Like, hey, no, see.
Which is why there's like this problematic aspect that I think we keep hitting on every episode without meaning to, of just the problem with the good versus bad aspect and the black and white thinking there of like,
yes,
you're either a good person or a bad person, or you're so-and-so is either good or bad. It's like, it leads to so much problem.
Right. So I think the best way to handle the Bluebeard in us is to know him, so that we can recognize him. And then in the recognizing of him, we can help heal him.
I love that, because behind it is usually like a terrified little kid in
exactly.
us.
Who's like, why wasn't I enough? Like, why wasn't everything I gave you enough? Why couldn't you just please respect my one wish of not opening that door? Because in opening that door, she found out who he quote unquote really was. Or is that who he really was? Or is that just all the lies that he believes about himself that causes him to be Bluebeard? So I had an experience this weekend that was super intense, but just the thing that comes up so much is our inability to process when we hurt someone, or when we were bad, or when we were wrong. And so there was actually a gentleman who was having a hard time relieving his bladder. And so it was coming up like, well, what is it that you need to let go of? Like, what is it that is hard for you to let go of? And his intention at the beginning of the night was to be the person his dog believes he is. Like the way his dog looks at him. And it's like, why, what keeps us from believing that, And as I was, just sitting with him, I think the thing that you need to let go of are the lies, and the lies about who you are. Because again, the definition that we've been given of who a good person is equals us never doing anything, quote unquote, wrong or bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then when we couple that with the only way you're going to get to live with loved ones who have died, like the only way you're going to get to live in heaven is if you haven't done anything wrong. How can, like, what are we supposed to do? Like, how can we, what good does it do us to sit here and face all of these things that we did wrong, when what solution have we really been given for them?
Somebody else is going to fix it for you.
If
you're worthy of it.
A savior.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which Bluebeard honestly looks like a savior in the story too.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
So, so it was just like, I just kept saying to him, like, what if what you really are is honestly, you're a human. You're a human. You're so much more than a human. I believe we are so much more than a human. Yeah. But by definition of being a human, we are the yin and the yang. We're the both. We're the light and the dark. And so sometimes you're going to manifest as the Bluebeard, kind of going back to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Sometimes we're going to be the one who's giving and receiving, the giving being the feminine, the receiving being the masculine, or sometimes being, you can have one event and have two people perceive it as good and bad. So what if the lie, one of the lies that he needed to let go of was that the only way he's loved and accepted is if he's perfect. And then another thing that came up that was so valuable that I haven't really ever seen or worded it this way, was the way we let go of the lies is by holding on to the truth.
Oh my gosh, will you share your analogy with that? I thought that was so good, of the mountain.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That was huge for me to be able to shift, because when you're doing all this inner work, it can be overwhelming, like hanging on to the truth and figuring out what's true.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, when Quinn and I were talking, and it was about kind of like recognizing the Bluebeard and how to break him down. And she said, you just mentioned it just felt like a mountain. Like it just felt so big. And when you said that, what I saw was that the lie is really just the illusion of a mountain, and it can actually be broken down very quickly. And the truth is actually the thing that is a mountain, and it's immovable. I
just love that so much. Even hearing again just gives me chills, because I think that's such a comforting thought, Because, I mean, otherwise we just live in terror of the Bluebeards within us and without us all the time, because they're these huge monsters to try to tackle and figure out or keep ourselves safe from all the time, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. When he's a part of us.
So we talked a little bit about some of the craziness of my experience. I have a feeling we'll probably come back to some of those themes throughout, but I would love to turn the table and hear a little bit about your experience with this, because it was a totally different way of feeling and experiencing it as well.
So the direction, so the direction that Bluebeard actually ended up leading me was in the healing, the healing of him and his character. And, so it all kind of started, just like 3 weeks ago. Maybe it's been it's been a month about that. I got in a big car accident on the freeway.
So scary. It was so bad.
Yes. And I mean, so I was hit behind, I was hit from behind he was going freeway speed, and then he catapulted me into the median. So it was just like, my body has never experienced that kind of force. And what I felt like, it felt like actually such a portal for healing for me. And, I felt like it shook me to my core. And the question that came up from my core was, at your core, you've had a story that you are not safe. Is that the story you would like to keep there? Or would you like to replace that story with you are safe? And so,
in such a moment of like physical unsafety.
Yes,
so
right,
profound.
Right. Like, okay, so what are you? Are you safe? Are you not safe? And, so, I mean, like the transformation that has happened from this accident. So I was getting some body work done. As the body worker was on the right side of my body, which the right side is the masculine and the receiving, I felt like he was dead. And I was like, oh, it feels like it's dead. And so I was asking questions about that, like the masculine, like, why are you dead? And what I saw was this complete actual heartbreak on his part, because I believed the story that he wasn't safe. And then he began to believe the story that he wasn't safe. So his job was to protect and provide. He was supposed to be my safety. And so by me believing he wasn't, he just, becomes Bluebeard. Like he's so wounded and he's so hurt.
Well, I'm just feeling into that. Yeah.
I keep going. I know, or I keep going.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing forward is the aspect of whatever we're trying to fix inside of ourselves. If we're not aware that we're trying to fix it inside of ourselves, we usually try to just solve it through outside of us, right? So it's like where you're saying this masculine inside of you couldn't protect and couldn't be safe for you, then you're walking around feeling a little bit incomplete and not whole, because you don't have a fully, present masculine and strong feminine. And so then what does that naturally lead us to do? It leads us to try to find that strong, protecting, providing, safe masculine in men outside of us.
When the only thing I can find is one who reflects my story of my masculine.
Chills. Yes.
So,
wow. So then it creates more and more wounding over and over again, right?
Yes. Yeah. Just like, Bluebeard, you aren't safe. You aren't safe. You aren't safe. So following that body work, I actually did some plant medicine of my own and had a really, really fascinating journey around my dad, because he's supposedly supposed to be the protector and the provider. Yeah. So in my parents' relationship, that was actually my mom. My mom was the protector and the provider. And so as I was dropping into the medicine and really just kind of working with what was up, I just asked, like, I imagined him in my mind's eye, and I just asked him, and I said, Dad, like, what if you could protect and provide? And because I could feel he couldn't, I could feel I didn't believe that. But then it shifted, and he was like, well, I can, I just don't want to. I choose not to. And I was like, oh, fascinating. And then as I thought about that, because it's like, oh, he, like, if you look at him physically and like capability, he can absolutely provide. And so then it's like, why why didn't you then? Was I just not worth providing for? Was I not enough for you to provide for and take care of? But then that kind of morphed into this realization that back in time, if a man's value in a village or a tribe is to protect and provide, and then he discovers that he actually isn't capable of doing it. If he were to come forward and tell the truth that he's not capable of protecting and providing, what are the chances he gets removed from the tribe and kicked out, and then he will die? And so it actually wasn't safe for him to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't believe I can protect and provide. Can someone teach me or help me? They take on the egoic approach. It's like, oh, I can totally protect and provide for you. I just don't want to. You're not worth it. And so then as the journey kind of went on, it actually, as I was leaning into this idea of just like being okay with my dad and like, hey, Dad, everything's okay. I realized he didn't believe that he deserved to be okay. And it was this sense that he had like ruined someone's life. And so it was like, because he had ruined someone's life, he doesn't deserve to have this amazing life. And later, as I've thought about it, he had a younger brother who became an alcoholic at 14, and he actually died from alcoholism. And maybe a year or two after he died, his Uncle Steve was coming to me and he was telling me something, but I was having a kind of a hard time, like totally interpreting it. But it was something along the lines of, one of my siblings has done something that they feel really bad about and they need to forgive themselves. And I kept hearing that it was around my Aunt Vicky. And so I just called my dad and I was like, Dad, Uncle Steve, I'm pretty sure is saying that like, there's someone that he needs, that one of you needs to forgive yourselves. And I said, I'm thinking it might be Aunt Vicky, but I don't know. And so then my dad called me 2 days later and he said, he's like, Callie, it was actually me. And he said, when we were younger, so around that age when Steve was 14, my dad was the oldest. He said he brought me into his room and he lifted up his bed skirt, and underneath his bed was full of alcohol. He had just gone to Wyoming with someone and bought all of it. And he was asking my dad for help. And my dad didn't know what to do. And my dad didn't do anything. And so my dad believed that it was his fault that his brother died of alcoholism and had no life. And so the story, so the thing that was so fascinating after this idea that, no, it's not okay for me to be okay because I hurt someone, it then appeared as an image of almost a vial of like multiple vials of poison that were in my abdomen. And the poison was actually going into my intestines or into my body. And the poison was self-hatred. Wow. But the self-hatred, it was so that anybody that I had hurt could see that I was punishing myself. Right? Wow. It's like, hey, I get it. I know I hurt you. I didn't mean to. I know I ruined your life. I didn't mean to. But look, I'm poisoning myself. And I thought, why in the hell did we make that the response to quote unquote hurting someone? Because every single one of us has hurt someone. So going back to this idea of like the gentleman in the journey, you're a human, and every human is going to have Bluebeard in them. And Bluebeard's just a lie. He's a lie of who the masculine is. And if you can hold on to the truth of who Bluebeard is, then Bluebeard can heal. And because every single one of us has done something wrong. And how many of us have vials of poisonous self-hatred that we're pumping into ourselves? You have one and I have one because we both did something wrong. Why can't we tell a different story necessarily of who we are and how this human experience works so that none of us have to have self-hatred?
Yeah, it's just bringing back like that good, bad, but also right, wrong. Like these things mess with us. Because if you have to be right or you have to be good, then yeah, you get that poison hooked up because you should hate yourself because you did a terrible thing.
And trying to make it right?
Yeah.
So that we can go to heaven and not hell, or so that we can have good things happen to us. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. How do I make this right? I will hate myself. I will never let myself be okay. I ruined your life. I will ruin mine. Does that prove enough to you that I'm sorry?
And people do literally end their lives over these types of stories inside themselves.
Because they can't let it go.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
So in redeeming that part, or in understanding it better, talk a little bit about what that journey's been of just helping to work with this energy more and not keeping the poison coming in.
Right. Well, and so that was kind of its own really beautiful thing of seeing that and realizing that, oh man, we could see this differently. We could see this differently and not help ourselves, not hate ourselves. But
the biggest transformation
was in the healing of Bluebeard, because as I started to realize that because my dad had a story that he could not protect and provide for me, I had a relationship with the masculine that he didn't protect and provide for me. And so as I have been telling the truth about that, how do you let go of the lie? You hold on to the truth. So the truth is that every single masculine, when it hasn't been lied to, is protecting and providing. And so by the nature of what I am, I'm going to manifest what I believe. I'm going to see what I believe. And so I believed that I was not protected and provided for. And my relationship with Heavenly Father exacerbated that.
Yeah.
Because if I was protected and provided for by him, then nothing bad would ever happen to me. And so since all of these quote unquote bad things, or in other words, since I've been experiencing being a human on this planet, which is a contrast of all of the different experiences, I defined that as I was bad, or I wasn't loved and I wasn't protected and provided for by the masculine. So to have been holding this new story, so going back to that car accident, what do you want in your core? I want the story that I am safe. And so I need to remind Bluebeard that you are safe and you are loving and that you are a protector and a provider. And any other story that you believed was simply a lie. And to even just see, like in my mind's eye, to see Callie when she believed she was abandoned by the masculine and not protected and provided for, it's like it's so obvious something was missing from her. And now to recognize that he's here, he's always been here, and he never left me. Everything is transforming.
Yeah.
Because imagine moving through the world believing you are not protected, provided for, and that you've been abandoned by the masculine, versus believing that you have always been loved by him, protected and provided. But he's not going to, the masculine is just going to be with me while I have all of these earthly experiences I wanted to experience. He's not going to say, no, you can't have that, because then I would be scared or that would be uncomfortable for me. So I don't want to have you go through this experience. It's just like my own masculine's essence is just like, all right, what are we doing next? Like, I'm here for it. And I see what you have picked for us to experience. And I am going to make sure that that's what happens. I'm going to protect and provide that experience for you. There was a time when I was in Lake Powell, and I went to push a friend into a little pool of water, and I slipped and slammed my head on the rock and split it open. So yeah, he was a dentist, so he stitched up my head on the back of the boat. But anyway, when it happened, I was really kind of like, this was actually right before I got divorced. So it was kind of like the beginning of my real, like, starting to have a huge transformation. But my mom had been gone for a couple years. And I remember after it happened being like, Mom, what the hell was that? Like, I feel like I just got punished. I feel like I've been trying to be good and I've been trying to learn all these things. Why did that just happen? Like, what did I just do to deserve that? And her answer that came was, it's like a feeling sense, but it was like, you're always meant to hit your head. It's what, like, that was part of your creation. But she's like, we didn't let you hit your head any more than you had decided to hit your head. It was like, you wanted to hit your head an 8 out of 10. You were protected and provided for in the fact that you only hit your head in an 8 out of 10. Like, and could almost feel that from her, right? Like, oh gosh, what else did Callie do? Like, okay, she's created a car accident. she's created smacking her head on this rock. I get to be here to protect her and make sure she doesn't hurt herself one little bit more than she designed for herself to hurt herself. But even in the understanding that the protector and provider has still always been my mom, it's manifesting as this feminine energy instead of this masculine energy. So, I mean, even in my car accident, I only had airbag burns on the lower half of my body and none on my upper when all of my airbags went off. And later after the accident, my mom showed me that she wrapped herself around me. It's kind of cool.
It's so cool. And it's pretty mind-blowing. I just feel like throwing out a reminder again that like the stories we tell ourselves matter. That's like,
yeah.
Because I'm just hearing, like, as you're sharing some of these nuances of stories that you've believed or then shifted, it's like, it really is where the miracle happens in our life when we get to experience a different story.
When we find the truth.
Yes. So that is so key with what you were helping me find with my own experience with all of this, is just feeling, here again, that unprotected, alone, not enough aspect.
Punished. I'm clearly not doing this right.
Yeah. They actually are better than me. And I actually am really lucky that they, go beneath them to have a relationship with me kind of beliefs. But you helped me really figure that one out to a point of just coming back to myself, coming back to my strength. And you were connecting the dots between this masculine aspect showing up almost like I've got your back, right? And then it feeling this connection for me that was kind of important, of feeling like I hadn't lost my wings. Like I had this experience in a plant medicine journey years and years ago where I was just hysterical. Like they took my wings kind of a feeling. And I could even feel like, this will sound crazy if you've never done plant medicine, but it's powerful. But it was like I could feel the empty sockets where the wings had been ripped out of my back. And coincidentally, have also had major neck and shoulder issues for the past couple of years since realizing all this as well, or seeing that. And then having this experience as you and I were talking through it and feeling into like you helping me see that was a lie. The wings, that sense of protection and safety and freedom, like that was never taken. And it was just in believing that it could be, that it just, it's insane what we get to try to believe here. That's absolutely not true.
Right. Yeah. But I also it's like, it's mythical.
It is.
You have freaking wings.
Yes.
Yeah, it was actually so cool. I had forgotten that Quinn had that experience at the journey.
Yeah.
And so, yes. And so she's like, Callie, I just feel like I'm like approaching this edge of this cliff. And I was kind of like just there with her. And I was like, yeah, it's like, do you have a parachute or not? And then all of a sudden I was like, you've got freaking wings. I'm like, you have wings. And then she's like, Callie, they were gone. And so then even how you went on to share that the other women there were like, oh, it's okay. Like, yeah, the wings are gone. We know it hurts, but like, this is what's best. So we have like this packing that we can pack into the holes that tries to make it feel better.
And then stitch it up. And this is how you be human.
Yes. Yeah. This is how you stay safe, Quinn.
Oh.
So then going back and being like, oh my gosh, the wings, I believe, are connected to our relationship with the masculine, with the Bluebeard. Like, because who is responsible for our safety? The masculine. And so then that image of even your mom being like, oh gosh, yeah, so your wings are a little big, a little fancy, a little flashy. These are definitely not acceptable. Like for sure, those are not okay. Yeah. And so it's like, how do they come back? And even like your story of like what's been happening with Randy, like this masculine, your person is safe. And so your wings can come back because the safety is there. The truth is there. The truth is that we've always been protected and provided for. But we wanted to have this really freaking crazy, epic earth experience that can look really freaking messed up.
And terrifying.
And and beyond painful. Mm-hmm. But the masculine didn't ever leave us unprotected, and he's not safe. But how many men believe they are not safe? Mm-hmm. And they are not capable of protecting and providing? It's really kind of heartbreaking.
It is. And this is the path towards, bringing back wholeness. I feel like what we're describing here is coming home to yourself, right? Becoming or returning to your own remembrance of your wholeness. Like, I really love the idea of, there's no guarantee that there is heaven outside of this earth. Mm-mm. And so I firmly can't just believe that anymore, that we've just got to suffer through and endure till we finally feel good after we die. Right. And instead, like what we're talking about and addressing this inner aspect, that the wounded masculine that becomes a predator, that colludes mm-hmm. with unsafe people and circumstances outside of us, or that keeps us holding ourselves back and playing small and staying in our golden cages that we've been told are safer than us being on our own and following our own intuition. Right. This is why this is so important to go about this conversation with myth, instead of just telling each other, we're telling you as listeners, like, well, just like be more confident. Don't let people make you feel like you're small.
You deserve everything.
Yes.
You have value. And the left brain's like, no, you don't.
Yes. Because what's happening inside of us is like a mythical experience. And these archetypes and these stories have so much power to help us see things that are happening without words. And it's probably that, like you've brought up before, the right and left brain distinction of that the right brain doesn't think in words and logic, and it does think in pictures and imagery and myth.
Feeling and creativity and all of the amazing things.
Yeah.
And just, when we heal him, when we heal the Bluebeard inside of us, then I think...
let go of the illusion.
Yes, then it actually makes him easy to recognize in others. Mm. And if that's not our story of our relationship with him anymore, then he's not going to manifest in close personal relationships, because we will have seen the truth.
Yes.
And so the manifesting story that we will be transmitting will be the true one, that we are protected and provided for, and he is safe.
I think that's game changing.
It has been beyond transformational for me. Like, before we sat down to do this podcast, I don't know if there's ever been like the feeling that was just overwhelming for me is how important this is to me, to heal the masculine, to realize the pain on both sides, for my feminine and him to have believed these lies about himself. And this is a concept I've been working on with myself for a long time. Like, oh my gosh, I am not just a feminine. Like, because before, when I would see myself as only a feminine, I was trying to even just have an internal idea. And it's like, oh, you're like a queen bee, and there's the hive, and that's where your power is. To then understand, no, I was only seeing half of myself. Like, I am, as a whole being, a masculine and a feminine. And even in the idea of, the breath, giving the breath being feminine, but the receiving of the breath being masculine, and the heart beating oxygenated and like everything about me and everything about this planet demonstrates this masculine, feminine giving and receiving energy. And so I really do believe that every masculine that has ever shown up in my life has always just been reflecting what I believed about him. And so to now, in a short amount of time, even to like feel like, when I even just see myself, I have a masculine back, because that's where he is. He has my back. And And we even brought up, that a woman's need to be thin, right? Or diet, or her relationship with her physical body. And I was like, I have been trying to heal that story forever. And I know that its original wounding happened due to the masculine. So I healed the masculine story, and I healed that wounding and the story that I have of not being enough myself for him. So yeah, it's everything. I mean, I think I probably will say that every week, but it's
I know every month. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, this shift of recognizing more of exactly what you're describing, it feels like I'm going into experiences with other people outside of my family, out in workplaces or in the social media even. And this fear of they could betray me at any minute, this fear of they could make me feel small, I could trust them and open my heart and then be totally wounded is gone right now. Like, because of all this Callie and I have literally been talking about this myth nonstop for the past few weeks.
Yes, for
it's
sure.
It's been so big, but I feel like because of really looking at this, I feel so much more safe inside of myself of knowing no matter what happens, I'm okay. I can be okay, whether I am, if I have a fancy title with a job or if I don't, if I live in a nice house or if I live in a little dumpy house that is not in a great neighborhood, right? Like,
yeah.
Like this aspect of the parts of me that used to collude because they believed that we weren't enough, that I wasn't okay, that I wasn't safe, like those parts being soothed changed my entire experience with life every day to be instead one of like, I wonder what's going to happen today.
Right.
What a fun
safety.
Surprise.
Yes, the safety. The safety. Like, I think everything comes back to that. And I've thought that for a while. Like, the thing I think, the thing I think that we are all searching for when we wake up is essentially safety. And then you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We can't move on until our safety has been established. And right now, my third grader is just struggling with school. And I think he's extremely empathic. But he, like last night before he's going to bed, I'm like, buddy, I just need you to know and trust that everything's okay. Like, I promise everything's okay. He's like, but what if it's not? I'm like, it is. But what if it's not? It is. But what if it's not? I'm not kidding. Over and over and over again. And
he's like, I'm pretty convinced.
Yes.
I have a lot of evidence.
Yeah. And it's like, but what if it isn't? And so I'm so excited to continue to try to help him understand that everything is okay, to like, he's 8, he's almost 9. So it's like, you haven't believed you weren't safe for that long yet. Like, I think we can get this back. You don't have to be 40 before you're like, oh, I am totally safe. And the masculine is safe and all of the above, because I know, like, I didn't see, oh my gosh. Okay. This is actually the coolest story.
Yeah.
So as this whole masculine energy thing was changing for me, and I realized, holy crap, I am protected and provided for. My oldest daughter is probably one of the toughest people I know now. And it's heartbreaking because I was unable to be with the reality of her anxiousness when she was little and having to go to school. She didn't ever go to preschool. She was only with me. I didn't understand any of this. And so I just forced her to go to school. I mean, she's crying. She doesn't want to leave me. And I'm like, Sydney, like, you're a girl, you need to toughen up, which is a whole other subject where I realized, wow, I am way tougher on my girls than I am on my boys.
Same. Yeah.
So as I am realizing what she was battling internally at school, and she freaking made it happen for herself, I was falling asleep, and then all of a sudden had this image of me. It's like kindergarten. I don't know if she hated kindergarten. Anyway, it was when she started to not be okay going to school. And there was this image of me kneeling in front of her, and I had the masculine next to me. Only he believed in his ability to protect and provide. And I could kneel in front of Sydney, and the masculine created this container of like, Sid, it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. We've got it handled. There isn't, you can't say, I don't want to go to school, and us be like, well, you have to go to school, because if you don't go to school, I'm not okay. I'm so overwhelmed. You have to go to school so that I can go to work, so that we can provide. Like, no, it's like, you are so safe and protected, and everything is okay in this moment, to create the space for me to be able to know she's supposed, I believe we're always where we're supposed to be. Babe, you're supposed to be here. This is where you're supposed to be. This is where so much learning happens, not intellectually, like emotional, social, right? Like, holy crud. Welcome to the mess. Yeah. Well, yeah. And, so how I was able to show up as her mother, because I now have a protective, providing masculine energy, where I could actually be still with her and then be like, Sid, there's a good chance that you're feeling afraid because it's new, but that fear has now actually combined with every other kid at school that's afraid. And so you're all feeling afraid of something you don't need to be afraid of at all. And this is what I've been trying to explain to Malcolm. I'm like, buddy, I'm curious if maybe there's like another kid in your class who's afraid, and like you're afraid and they're afraid. And he came home and he's like, oh, Mom, I know exactly who it is. She's like this little girl. She doesn't like learning and she's afraid. And so I was like, well, buddy, I want you to think about her. Or like, I had to get a CT scan. Is that the scary thing? Yeah. I had to get a CT scan because of my car accident. And I haven't, like, I don't usually get scared about things like that. MRI. Yeah. Okay. That makes more. Yeah. So the MRI where they, and the metal CTs thing. Yes. Okay. A metal thing. Yeah. Metal thing. There's pounding. And like, as I was laying in there, I'm totally having a friggin' panic attack. And so I was just like, okay, Callie, can you breathe? I'm like, yeah, we can breathe. Like, okay. Can you have the guy stop the machine? Like, can you stop? Yes. Okay. Talk myself down. So I was explaining this to Malcolm. I was like, buddy, when you're sitting there and you can feel these feelings come, I want you to see if you can talk to yourself, because I'm telling you, you're safe. You're safe. I know you don't want to be there, but you're safe. You are with everyone. Your teacher's a good teacher. I know who she is. I'm right here. All of these things, trying to help him tell the truth, because I really do believe anxiety is just our bodies informing us that the story we're believing is a lie. And so then I was like, and tell her that. Tell the little girl that. Say, hey, we're actually okay. And I was even like, you can even try to imagine like a little ball of light going around her, but just like, hey, everything's okay. And so, yeah, under having the reality that we're actually protected and provided for, and the multiple facets of my life that is impacting right now is just kind of mind blowing.
I love that. And hitting home to just because we are protected and provided doesn't mean that we need to open ourselves up to, things and people that are clearly not safe for us.
Right. We can recognize them, I think, right? Yeah. Because we can recognize them. We healed the Bluebeard in us, and then he's no longer a threat, because we can see him in others and recognize him, and then send him some love and be like, hey, you're actually okay.
Yeah. And I'm not going to let you in my
totally
space.
But yeah. what I think is fun, to like something that we can even just start to witness in our future, if we aren't manifesting, if we aren't transmitting that they're scary and have power over us, they're going to naturally not be in our life.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
But yes, the importance
that
of the
so much sense. Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, Callie, this has been such an incredible conversation. Just in closing, is there anything you're hoping people walk away with, or something you wish we would have talked through?
No, just the, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
The point that, so in an experience this past weekend, there was someone who participated who realized he was scared of his own masculine. Like, he's scary. And so how can you try to come into something that you're afraid of? And so he's like, I don't really know how to like let go of that. And that's when it was like, you let go of the story that he's scary by holding on to the true story that he isn't. Like, you stop thinking about something by thinking about something else. So you've been telling the story that he's scary for a long time. Just start telling the story he's not. Start telling the story that he is a protector and a provider, and hold on to that. And as we start doing that, our left brain is going to tell it, like, rage against that. Like, try to convince us otherwise. And it's like, nope, I'm just experimenting right now. And I'm going to hold on to what I believe is actually true. That the masculine in its healed and ultimate form is a protector and provider. I'm going to hold that. I'm going to hold it until I start to see it manifest. And then it just gets really fun.
And practice.
Yes.
It, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because that's how you'll make a statement. The masculine is a protector and provider, and the left brain, bless its heart, is going to come and tell you all the reasons it's not. But if you can choose to believe in, even for a minute, like what my mom said, what if I'm actually the thing happening to the world? All along, I thought the world was happening to me. What if I'm the thing happening to the world? So what if the reason why my left brain has all of these stories proving that the masculine is unsafe is because I actually told it was. And so now I'm going to tell it he is safe. He is a protector and a provider. And then just see what happens.
I love that. It's kind of taking me on a tangent of just remembering I just binged all the 50 Shades of Grey books this past week. All 2,400 pages of 3 books. But it's such a story of this man who really believes himself to be unlovable and forever broken. And this journey to him with her continued practice and reassurance, assuring him, you actually are safe. You are good. You do care. You are kind. And him like letting go of the lies bit by bit so he could actually claim a healthy, happy life. And instead of having those lies run his life.
That's so like bringing us right back to it ends with us.
Oh yeah.
So I think that it can be a difficult fool's game to try to heal him outside of us if he isn't healed inside of us.
Amen.
So to start there, to heal him inside of us. And then I really do believe, really, it's only a matter of time before he manifests as healed in our personal relationships. I just think that's how we work.
I completely have seen that. You've been seeing it too. I think the most notable experience is that, I have gone from such a dramatic place with my husband to being hypercritical, just on him about everything and anything. And he's never enough and never good enough, never providing enough, never there for me enough, never showing up. Like, to then shifting this story inside of me and absolutely just adoring this man, right. Like falling head over heels in love with exactly who he is, and watching him like come out of the shadows of himself and actually embody a more safe and strong and powerful man that is who he really is too.
That's so awesome. Yes.
So cool.
Yes. Especially since you're still married. Mm-hmm. You don't have to get divorced and then find someone new. Mm-hmm. You changed the Bluebeard in you, and he
yeah. And I don't think that's possible in every relationship.
No, but it's nice to know it is.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, because I found, at least in myself, that this, when we believe the masculine to be so weak, like you were saying with like making your daughters so strong or having to show up your strong.
Yeah.
Like we go into hyperdrive as far as like, let us have everything under control and be in power. Right. And it's not driven by a natural sense of power. It's driven by fear.
Of needing to be safe.
Yeah.
Because the truth of the masculine has been taken by a lie, by a lot of them.
If you're not going to keep me safe, I will.
I will do it myself. Yeah.
And I guess I'll have to keep you safe too. And I'll just keep everybody safe.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why, like, so to go back to that bodywork appointment where I'm like, he's dead. And it's like, you believed he wasn't safe to a point he believed it too. And he's freaking heartbroken. Feels unwanted and unneeded. It's like, well, I'm feeling the same way. You left me. So to heal that story of your masculine and your feminine, it's very powerful.
It is. And recognizing, like, I could hear how some people might be listening to this and think, well, but your husband was probably an angel the whole time. No, he wasn't. Bless his heart. And like, you know what I mean? And so there is a part of me that was like, we can't just forgive him. Like, he's got to prove to us before we extend any kind of olive leaf. I was doing the same to that part of myself inside of me, right? That's like, no, we haven't shown up for ourselves. We can't safely trust ourselves with ourselves. Like our hopes and dreams aren't fully safe because when push comes to shove, we won't show up for it. We're going to procrastinate. We're going to come up with excuses, or we're going to keep doing the thing for a minute and then we're going to give up and we're going to get distracted. Like anything I could have yelled at my husband about doing, my own masculine was showing up exactly that way and probably worse. And I was just taking it out, that frustration, totally taking it out on my husband, but then seeing it and addressing it in myself, just like you've been saying. This has changed our relationship, my relationship with my husband overnight. It was like so sudden that I can't not see him as just this guy that I just adore.
So cool.
And his behavior didn't quote unquote change per se,
right?
But it actually naturally is, or I'm just seeing what's real. You know, it's crazy.
Well, and to what you were saying, where you're like, he wasn't always perfect, or what, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the truth is that we're going to see what we believe. The power of our story is so crazy. Mm-hmm. Any of us that believe that we aren't loved and we aren't enough and we aren't wanted and we aren't taken care of, there's reasons why we believe that. The definition of what that looks like that we've been given is bogus. Mm-hmm. If our life isn't perfect, then there's no way we can't, that our unconscious brain isn't like, oh, well, we're not taken care of. We're not loved. We're not enough. So because true. If you were, then your life would be perfect. So is your life perfect? Mm-hmm. No. So therefore you're none of those things. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. So here I'm transmitting this story that I'm not enough and not loved and not taken care of because of a faulty definition. You change that definition and you realize, holy crud, no, I've always been loved and always been taken care of. And then that's what you're going to start to get back, because we can perceive and experience anything. So really all of us really are whole and complete and loving and amazing and gifted and talented, but enough so that we can manifest that try to prove we're not.
Mic drop.
Bull.
I love that. Callie, oh my gosh, this has been such a cool conversation. Thank you for being here.
It's my favorite.
I love it. Inflow and On Fire is a weekly podcast to help you find your flow and stoke your inner fire so that you can live more joyfully, create those big and beautiful dreams, and make the world a better place. Living Inflow on Fire isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. We make this show every week to help support you in that practice with deep inspirational insights and real-world examples of other soulful people who are leaning into this journey also. To better support your Inflow on Fire practice, we send you each week's episode via email direct to your inbox so you never miss a beat. Go to quincurtis.com/email to sign up and stay inspired. Also, when you sign up, you'll get access to my free Living Inflow and On Fire guide, a step-by-step path to find your flow and stoke your fire today. Sign up at quincurtis.com/email to amp up your inflow and on fire lifestyle with me now. This has been another episode of Inflow and On Fire, a weekly podcast cheering you on to follow your heart and come more alive. It can be tough to stay in flow and keep your creative fires burning bright, so please take this podcast with you on your journey. Subscribe so we can keep fanning your flames and cheering you on each week. If you got something out of this episode and haven't already left us a review, please do. Positive reviews really, really help other people who need this to find it also. I'm your host, Quinn Curtis, artist, mother of 5, and aspiring children's book author illustrator. I'm here creating this show because I know just how hard it can be ability to even just stay excited and engaged in our everyday lives. With so many demands for our time and attention, it can be especially tricky to prioritize those nudges from our heart and soul. However, the costs like depression, disconnection, anxiety, overwhelm, loneliness, lack of fulfillment, and so much more are really high when we don't. So every week I gather soulful stories, inspiring ideas, and incredible people to help us stay connected to our inner compass and remember what's most important. Ultimately, I created this show because I need those regular reminders too, but my hope is it can also inspire and help you to keep going and bring more of your magic that's inside of you out into the world. We need it. Special thanks to Avesa and Maddie Love for our theme music. Thank you so much for listening, friend. In between now and when we connect again, stay Inflow on Fire. It matters, and you matter.